For the first 17 years of my life, I lived in Bogota, a country that has no subway or metro or anything for that matter yet. So now that I live here in Toronto, I am in constant awe of the subway here and in some cities that I have had the pleasure to visit. I always wondered how they work, as in how they came to be, how do they remain to be so efficient and optimal even through hundreds of years, as some were open in like the 19th century. So this is a video of how do subways work. One of the most interesting points of this topic is how old they actually are. The first subway that came to be was the London Tube that opened its first station and line in 1863. It was the first rapid system of its form, and it was transcendental to the way big cities manage traffic. It used steam locomotive beneath the city to move around passengers from one point to the city to another. Then in 1870, something really weird happened in New York City. It was, say, a Monday, and then on Tuesday they woke up with the news that they had a subway. It was a pneumatic experiment conducted by Alfred Ely Beach, and it was short-lived because the system it used, it wasn't good enough. But it's crazy how one day they had no subway system and the next one they were reading the newspapers in one. Okay, so now that we know there are some efficient and some non-efficient subways, how are subways built? The first line of the New York City Metro was using the cut and cover method, meaning blasting, excavating, and using human brute force to open up the tunnels at night and then removing the discards during the day. Several obstacles hindered the process and timelines of the construction of the subway system. This meant rerouting, changing budgets, changing companies, and etc. The construction of the line, not only the New York City subway system, but many other lines, included some human casualties. Let's say that during the building of the New York City subway line, there weren't really that many, but it did include 3, and it brought up the number of casualties is 16 deaths and around 125 serious injuries. Thankfully, the way the subways are built has changed, and okay, to be honest, one of the topics that mainly spiked my curiosity in relation to this topic was that here in Toronto, during the building of a new line, I kept reading in Twitter, Reddit, and news sources about Rexy, Rennie, and how they were going day and day and day opening up the tunnels, and I was like, what are these legends? Well, they are TBMs. TBMs, or a tunnel boring machine, is a giant cylindrical device that is up to 12 meters in diameter and over 80 meters long. This machine drills through earth, rock, and basically everything it finds on its path to open up the tunnels of the different tubes and rails of the system. TBMs streamline the construction of tunnels, so we went from a human-based operation to a machine-based operation. It has a rotating head that excavates, as I said, rock, soil, and anything on its way. So they actually have names. So the naming process of TBMs is something that is used by companies and cities to include the community in the waiting of the opening of a new line. So for example, here in Toronto, Metrolinx, the company that manages and builds subway lines, opened up a competition for people to submit and vote for different names, in this case 2 TBMs that they were gonna use, and Rexy and Rennie came to be. There are some other funny names. For example, in the UK, there was a TBM called the Bodie McBoatface. It was the first to inspire naming contests all around the world. Subways are built the way they are, usually underground or elevated to avoid obstructing the day-to-day life of the city. So they use a technique called deep bore tunneling that goes as deep as to 116 meters deep, which is insane. 116 meters is the deepest subway station in the world. We'll talk about it later, but it's just wild. They also use current tunnel intelligence, so tunneling shields, to minimize against the disturbance in movement and sound all around the construction. Different tunnel types, the most common are underground, elevated, or a combination of both. And of course, there's a really important aspect that they have taken into account, that is the ventilation. Of course, an elevated subway has an easier way there, but a subway that goes as deep as 116 meters deep includes great engineering when it comes to ventilation and keeping the air and pressure controlled and human safe. And lastly, the electricity. Some stations use over 10,000 kilowatts a day, which is crazy. So they have to come up with the infrastructure to provide this energy to the subway systems, or use technologies like rubber tired systems to improve the energy efficiency of the system, like in Montreal, which through this technology they have improved the speed and the gradient of the system. Now, another really important thing that I wanted to talk about is why do some cities have subways and some don't? The answer may be quite obvious for some of us, but there are several factors that make having a subway in a city a possibility a reality or not. The first, of course, population density. It all comes down to if there's gonna be enough passengers that are gonna use the subway in a day-to-day life. So in a low density city, they would opt for just high quality roads or buses, and in a higher density city like Toronto or New York, subways will probably take a priority as they move more people more efficiently. Of course, there's the subway factors. Building a subway is not cheap. It takes billions of dollars, and it's really rare to hear that a subway was built within budget. So there's costs, there's changes, more money, less money, funding problems, sponsoring problems, and so on. So the economic factor is really important. Also, geology, of course, drilling through hard rock like in Montreal is way easier because it's more controlled than drilling in soft soil, which is really unstable. Until now, going back to what happens in Bogota, Colombia, these three things really have a great impact. Bogota is a really rain heavy city, so it's definitely soft soil, and the line that they're building right now is elevated due to that. Other reasons, but due to that. Of course, there's been economic problems, and Bogota has had a really rapid growth, and things including the transportation system has been trying to play a catch-up game most of the time. But there's one last factor that impacts everything. In this case, it also impacts subway systems. That is the politics and cultural problems and changes. So for example, Soviet era cities are characterized because they have built great and grand subways, but Western cities like LA, they're famous for their highways, the Walmart, the parking lots. This also into account in Bogota not having a metro, not having a subway system. Every 4 years there's a change in government, so the ball has been going from one to another, from one to another. It looks like it's happening now. You can actually drive to the city and see some of the infrastructure of the elevated metro. The hopes are up, but it's been definitely a game of unkept promises. Now I wanted to talk about some iconic subway system. There are thousands of systems and stations and lines. The first one, of course, how old is the first subway? It was built in 1863, over 150 years ago. That's crazy, and it's still useful today, of course, after being remodeled and so on and so forth, but it's really old. I also looked up the difference between subway and metro. There's really not a difference. Subway is used here in America, and then metro is used mainly in Europe. The metro came to be because the company that built the Paris Metro, Compagnie du Chemin de Fer Métropolitain de Paris, or was referred to by a shortened version of the company's name as Le Métropolitain or the Metro. This is just another trend set by French people and Parisian people. One of the most famous subway systems is of course the New York City subway system that has 472 stations. Some people take it to like 423 because some stations are so big that they're like several stations in just one. So let's say the official number is 423, but it's still a crazy number. It moves millions of people a day, and it really takes you from anywhere in the city to anywhere in the city. During the research of this project, I found an article of a guy named Ben. I'm gonna put the link and the information because I think it's a story really worth reading. He visited all 472 subway stations, including a secret one. It took him months and months, and most of all, a lot of planning. He said that like by the end, he had spent so much time in the subway that his leg felt like when you walk on a boat or in a water transportation, because they were so wobbly from all them moving around in a subway car that he just is done. But he did it. 472 stations. It's wild. Lastly, as I said, there's a subway station in China that is 160 meters deep. To put that in perspective, that's about 2 times as tall as the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy. So it's really deep to the point that your ears are constantly popping, and you can look up the video. It takes around 10 to 12 minutes just to go down the escalators. Of course, you have to do it through escalator. I don't see any other way, or you're just very athletic, but it's escalator after escalator after escalator. 10 minutes just to get to your subway car. Okay, that has been my video on subways. Again, if you have any idea of a video you want me to research on, leave it down below. If there's a subway you would like me to talk about, for example, the Rome subway, I had the opportunity to be there earlier in the year, and there were some parts where you could see that they found archaeological items from the Roman Empire, and so they would have to just reroute or just put them in a frame for everyone to see. So you could be going to work and you could see something 300, 400, 500 years old. So yeah, leave down below any interesting facts you have about subways. I think they're crazy. For some people, it's just part of the daily life. It has become part of my daily life. But coming from a city and a place that doesn't have it, I guess I came with that awe and that curiosity about how every 3 minutes every 5 minutes, maybe 8 minutes in the weekends. There is a new car that's gonna take me from one end to another. Here in Toronto, I'm just waiting for the new line to open to go explore more at the city. Yeah, that has been everything for today, and thank you.